How far would you go for money? For some, the answer is unsettlingly far. Meet Pam Hupp, a 51-year-old woman from Missouri. On the surface, she was just an ordinary suburban resident. But beneath that facade was a chilling greed that would drive her to commit unspeakable acts. This is the story of a woman who destroyed lives, manipulated the justice system, and left a trail of chaos, all for a life insurance payout. Our story begins with a deep friendship, or so it seemed. Pam's best friend, Betsy Faria, received a devastating diagnosis: terminal cancer. As Betsy confronted her own mortality, she turned to her closest friend for support. But instead of comfort, Pam saw an opportunity. A dark and twisted plan began to form in her mind, one centered around Betsy's $150,000 life insurance policy. Just days before Betsy's death, Pam drove her to the library. There, she convinced Betsy to change the beneficiary of her life insurance policy from her husband Russ to Pam herself. The story she sold Betsy was a noble one. Pam would hold the money in a trust for Betsy's 2 young daughters, ensuring they were taken care of after she was gone. Betsy, trusting her best friend completely, signed the papers, unknowingly sealing her own fate. She believed she was securing her children's future. In reality, she was funding her own murder. On December 27, 2011, the unthinkable happened. After driving Betsy home from her chemotherapy session, Pam Hupp brutally murdered her best friend. After committing this monstrous act, Pam simply left, leaving Betsy's husband, Russ, to discover his wife's body. When police arrived, their suspicion quickly fell on Russ. And who was pointing the finger most vehemently? Pam Hupp. She fed investigators a carefully crafted narrative, claiming that Betsy and Russ had a volatile relationship and that Russ had been abusive. She lied, telling police that Russ had threatened to kill Betsy. Pam even went as far as to suggest that Russ was angry about being cut out of the life insurance policy, a change that she herself had orchestrated. Her testimony was compelling, painting a picture of a jealous, violent husband. Based almost entirely on Pam's web of lies, the police and prosecutors built their case against an innocent man. Russ Faria was arrested, charged, and put on trial for the murder of his wife. Despite his pleas of innocence and a solid alibi, he had receipts and phone records showing he was with friends Miles. Await the jury was swayed by Pam's convincing performance on the stand. In 2013, Russ Faria was wrongfully convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Pam had not only gotten away with murder, but she had also successfully framed an innocent man for her crime. For 2 long years, Russ sat in a prison cell for a crime he didn't commit. But the truth has a way of coming out. Betsy's daughters, who never received a dime of the insurance money Pam had promised, filed a civil lawsuit against her to reclaim it. During the depositions for this lawsuit, Pam's story began to unravel. Her lies and inconsistencies became too glaring to ignore. This new evidence was enough to grant Russ a new trial. In 2015, his conviction was finally overturned, and he walked free. The spotlight was now turning towards Pam. With Russ exonerated, she was the prime suspect. Feeling the pressure, Pam concocted another bizarre and deadly scheme to throw the police off her trail and re-implicate Russ. She decided to stage an attack on herself and frame Russ for hiring a hitman. Her plan was sickeningly elaborate. Posing as a producer for the TV news show Dateline, she targeted a man named Louis Gumpenberger who had severe physical and cognitive impairments from a past car accident. She lured him into her car with a story about needing his help to reenact a 911 call for the show, promising him thousands of dollars. She drove him to her home, and it was there that her final, desperate plan unfolded. On August 16, 2016, Pam called 911 in a panic. She claimed a strange man had jumped out of a car, held a knife to her throat, and demanded she drive him to the bank to get Russ's money. She told the dispatcher she had fled into her house, but the intruder had followed her. Then, during the call, she shot and killed Louis Gumpenberger, claiming it was self-defense. To solidify her story, Pam planted evidence. She placed a handwritten note in Louis's pocket. The note contained instructions, supposedly from Russ, ordering Louis to kidnap Pam, retrieve the insurance money from her, and then kill her to eliminate her as a witness. It was a bold, almost theatrical attempt to frame Russ once and for all. But this time, the police weren't buying it. Her story was full of holes. Investigators were immediately skeptical. Why would a supposed hitman hired by Russ allow Pam to run into her own house? How could Louis, a man with significant physical disabilities, overpower her in the way she described? And the note? It seemed far too convenient. Phone records soon proved Pam had been in contact with Louis before the incident, completely contradicting her story of a random attack. The evidence against her was overwhelming, facing a mountain of proof and the prospect of a death penalty trial for the murder of Louis Gumpenberger. Pam Hupp finally ran out of lies. She entered an Alford plea, a deal where she didn't admit guilt, but acknowledged that prosecutors had enough evidence to convict her. She was sentenced to life in prison without parole for Louis's murder. Although she is now behind bars for life, the story isn't quite over. In 2021, she was finally charged with the murder of her friend, Betsy Faria, the original crime that started this whole tragic saga. Pam Hupp's story is a chilling reminder of how greed can corrupt a person's soul, leading them to betray, manipulate, and destroy anyone who stands in their way. Thanks for watching. If you found this story as compelling as we did, make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into fascinating cases. See you next time.